According to Dennis Hartman from the website Our Past Times, did you know that archaeologists have discovered ancient drums that date back from as far as 6000 BC? I don't know about y'all, but it makes me feel very old. Drums have been created for many centuries now and have many different types and many techniques used a lot of people do not know about today. There's a lot more that goes into drumming. I'm here to inform you and get you guys a better understanding about drums, what they are. Without further ado, drums have a long history and have portrayed many different types and techniques used all over the world. So now I'm going to inform you a little bit a history lesson about where drums first originated. Referring back to Dennis Hartman, drums was developed simultaneously by cultures around the world, including Africa, Asia, and the Americas. So in these areas, there were tribes that used drums for tribal purposes as rituals and dances. And reason why archaeologists know this is the fact that these are cave drawings, like this one right here. Joe Marquardt from the Smithsonian say that cave paintings in Europe represent a consistent tradition. This was the tradition for the tribes. They used drums for rituals and dances. Drums are very differently than they were back then as they are today. Mark Benfey, in his book Percussion, Repair, and Maintenance, wrote that the earliest drums consist of fish or reptile skins stretched over a hollow tree trunk, usually played by people's hands. So it's very simple, just animal skin, put a piece of wood underneath, and that was the drum. Very simple. Now today it's very differently. The drums today are made of Kevlar and polyester, which is two very strong substances that are used to help to withstand a great amount of force. Following the brief history, now I'm going to inform you about the different types of drums most commonly found today. The most commonly found is by far the drum set, which are y'all probably very familiar with when you think of drums. There's 4 different types. There's a modern kit, a jazz kit, a rock kit, and then there's an electric kit. The modern kit is just a basic drum set, what most people think of. The jazz kit's a little bit smaller than the modern kit. It's not as loud, and there's not as many techniques to going into playing with it. But it is played a little bit differently than the modern kit usually is. The rock kit's by far my personal favorite. It's a lot bigger and there's a tune lower than the modern kit usually is. There's a lot more drums, there's a lot more cymbals played, and there's a lot more options to play. But the next one's the electric kit is by far the parents' most favorite for their kids. It's not as loud, you can tune it up and down. It's already tuned for you, and it's just not as difficult to tune. But referring back to the rock kit, my favorite is by Neil Peart. It's his biggest drum set in the world. By far my favorite. So many options to play with. There's so many cymbals that tune differently. It's what the rock kit's made for. It's what it's made. The next type of drumming that is most commonly used around the world is known as drumline. I personally have played this all through high school, and it is very competitive and very you have to have very good skills to play. According to Joseph Valle from the University of Rhode Island, drumline members work as hard as professional football players. This is a true statement because your heart rate is constantly beating at 200, something like that. And drumline is very challenging. It is a lot harder to me, in my opinion, than drum kit because you're not the only one playing. There's more people playing with you, and you have to listen in, and you have to have very good listening skills to play. Along with different types, there are many different. There's two main different type of techniques to play. The first one that I'm going to say is about match grip. This is the most commonly used, and this is usually found on modern kits, like regular drum kits, and is very easily used. You use the 2 fingers to hold it, the fulcrum like this. Wrap your fingers around. That's pretty much it. Same thing for the left hand. The next one is called traditional grip. This is by far the hardest one out of the 2. Mark Wellis, in his book, A Fresh Approach to the Same Snare Drum, said the left hand was developed at the same time the drummers held drums on the side of the bodies. Many players use this today. This is usually played in drum lines for snare drum like I did, and is used for jazz drums. Like I said earlier, it's played differently. You use traditional grip. Instead of the fulcrum in your fingers, you put it in between the 2 fingers like this. You just wrap your fingers around and do up and down motion, or side to side motion rather than up and down. So Now that I informed you about the different types of grips, this is just a brief understanding what drums is about, and I hope you guys get a better understanding of this. Today I informed you a brief history about where drums originated from and describe the different types and different techniques used all over the world. Drums are very unique instruments that have truly impacted us all over the music today, and I can guarantee you the next time you look at drums, you will not look at them the same. Thank you. Any questions?
I do have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that the heart rate of a drumline drummer was that of a football player. What was the drum beat, the heartbeat per minute?
200, yes, sir. Yes, sir. That was found by, what was his name? Let's see if I can find it for you. By Joseph Valley at the University of Rhode Island. They did a study on this. I looked it up on the internet for you.
You also mentioned that the drums were made out of Kevlar and polyester. Why is that?
Because it's the drum head. It's a very, very strong substance that can absorb the shock from the drum. When the player hits it, it can absorb the shock, and it has a better sound to it as well. And it's just so it's supposed to last longer instead of like the older ones that just animal skins. They can't really last that long.
And that large rock drum kit, who was the player and what was the band?
Neil Peart. He was from Rush. They don't usually play. They don't play anymore. They're retired, but a lot of different types of drums and a lot of different cymbals. Each cymbal is tuned differently, and it's a very big kit. It's a rock kit, rather.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any more questions?
When you were speaking of the two different grips that are used, does a drummer usually be able to go between the two, or he just masters one?
Like in drumline, when I played, you could do like the tenors that we had, like the tenors I show you, like this one. The tenor players, they play match grip usually, and then our snare players would play traditional grip. So that's it. Usually can play with both if you want to, but it's most commonly used for match grip.
Very good.